Question 2. Do you know how much your family spends each year for food, clothing, and shelter? Almost two-thirds of the millionaires surveyed, 62.4%, answered yes to this question. So did Mrs. Rule. But only about 35% of high-income producing non-millionaires answered yes to this question. Many of these high-income, low-net-worth types have no idea how much they spend each year for such items as food consumed at home, foods consumed away from home, beverages, birthdays, holiday gifts for each category of recipient, each category of clothing for each household member at each store, babysitting, daycare fees, line of credit use, charitable contributions, financial advice, club dues, motor vehicles, and related expenses, tuitions, vacations, heating and lighting, and insurance. Notice that we did not include mortgage payments in our list. Often high-income, low-net-worth respondents boast about how much money they save on taxes via their mortgage deductions. Certainly, most millionaires who have mortgages outstanding also take advantage of this provision, but most millionaires also account for their other categories of domestic expenditures. Ask typical high-income, low-net-worth people about their goals. What will they tell you? A major goal they often name is to minimize their tax burden. They use the mortgage deduction as a way to accomplish this. Then why don't these same people compute their other domestic expenditures? Simply because they do not perceive any value in doing so. As they see it, most of their domestic spending is not deductible in computing one's taxable income. But Mrs. Rule sees things differently. Her goal is to become financially independent. In her case, to have $5 million by the time she and her husband retire. She believes that budgeting and accounting for domestic consumption is directly related to achieving this goal. In her view, tabulating helps control consumption. It also reduces the probability of allocating too many dollars to product and service categories that are not really important. Mrs. Rule has always tabulated expenditures for her business. She realizes that the same system she used for business accounting can be used for domestic purposes. This is an advantage of being a self-employed business owner. Mrs. Rule wants to be a free financial worry before her 65th birthday. Each time she tabulates, she tells herself she is reducing her fear of never being able to retire in comfort. Who has concern about their financial future? Not Miss Rule. Although she has an annual income of $90,000, she's worth more than 20 times that amount, and she is in control of her household's domestic spending. Robert and Judy, on the other hand, are frightened, and they should be. This couple earns $200,000 annually or more than twice that what Mrs. Rule earns. Yet, like many of today's high-income producing couples, Robert and Judy have only a fraction of Mrs. Rule's wealth. They feel that consumption controls them, not the other way around. Even Mrs. Rule might find it daunting to have to account for $200,000 in expenditures each year. Robert and Judy have 14 credit cards, and the Rules have 2, one for business use, the other for domestic spending. Let's talk about credit cards for a moment. Ask a large sample of millionaires a simple question about their credit cards. The results will give you an excellent idea of who these millionaires really are. Mr. and Mrs. Millionaire, please indicate by circling the appropriate number the credit cards that you or any member of your household possess. Circle all those that apply. Now close your eyes and pretend you are a millionaire with a net worth of nearly $4 million. What credit cards would be congruent with your station in life? Perhaps at the top of your list would be American Express, Platinum, Diners Club, or Carte Blanche. Perhaps you consider yourself a fashion-sensitive millionaire. You may list credit cards from Brooks Brothers, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord & Taylor, and even Eddie Bauer. You would be in the minority of millionaires if you did list these cards. The results from our National Survey of Millionaires reveal some interesting credit card preferences. Some highlights. Like most American households, most wealthy households have a MasterCard and a Visa card. The millionaire household is 4 times more likely to hold a Sears card, 43%, than a Brooks Brothers card, 10%. Both Sears and Penney's cards are significantly more popular among the wealthy than the cards of status retailers. Only 21% of wealthy households in America hold the Neiman Marcus card, 25% Saks Fifth Avenue, 25%, Lord and Taylor, only 8.1%, and Eddie Bauer card. Only 6.2% of the millionaires respondents hold the American Express Platinum card. 3.4% hold Diners Club, and fewer than 1% own Carte Blanche. Question number 3. Do you have a clearly defined set of daily, weekly, monthly, annual, and lifetime goals? The source of this question came from a decamillionaire who we interviewed a dozen years ago. He told us that he started a wholesale food business at the age of 19. He never finished formal high school, but did eventually receive his high school equivalency diploma. We asked him to account for the fact that although he was a high school dropout, he had accumulated over $10 million. His response was as follows: I've always been goal-oriented. I have clearly defined set of daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, annual goals, and lifetime goals. I even have goals to the bathroom. I even have goals to go to the bathroom. I always tell our young executives that they must have goals. Mrs. Rule also is goal-oriented. So are most of the millionaires. For every 100 millionaires who answered no to this question, there are 180 who answered yes. Who are the no's? Many of the high-income and inherited wealth types discussed in the last section. Many senior citizens and retired millionaires who have already reached their goals answered no. You may wish to reflect for a moment on the comments made by an 80-year-old multimillionaire. Authors. The first question we ask about is goals. What are your current goals? Mr. Clark. It was 438 an ounce yesterday in London. After Mr. Clark turned on his hearing aid, we repeated the question. Oh, goals, not gold. I see. My goals, I've accomplished what I've tried to do. My long-range goal was, of course, to accumulate enough wealth so I can get out of business and enjoy life. I've been down the road. I've got an international reputation. Mine is one of the greatest welding companies in the world. I never want to retire, but now my goal is my family and self-satisfaction about what I've accomplished. Mr. Clark is typical of seniors who have accumulated significant wealth. By the way, only 2 millionaires of all those that we interviewed ever told us that their goal was to spend my last dollar the day that I die. Neither Mr. Clark nor Mrs. Rule has such a goal. Mrs. Rule plans to leave educational trusts for all of her grandchildren. She also wants to enjoy life now after she retires. She wants to be financially secure. Her financial goal is to accumulate $5 million. Mrs. Rule knows how much she needs to set aside each year to attain her goals. But is she happy? That's a question very often asked of us regarding frugal millionaires. Yes, she is happy. She is financially secure. Mrs. Rule enjoys being part of a close-knit family. Her family is everything to her. Her life and her goals are simple. Mrs. Rule does not need a CPA to do her goal planning for her, although she does seek his counsel in regard to both her domestic and business-related needs. But Robert and Judy, our high-income, low-net-worth couple, are in a dire need of strong and intelligent guiding hand. They need a CPA who has considerable experience in changing his clients' orientations, one who will help them change their household environment from one of chaos and hyperconsumption to one of goal-oriented planning, budgeting, and controlling. Will they then be happy? We don't know, but we can tell you this. Financially independent people are happier than those in their same income age cohort who are not financially secure. Financially independent people seem to be better able to visualize the future benefits of defining their goals. Mrs. Rule, for instance, visualizes all of her grandchildren graduating from college. She visualizes their success after college. She never sees herself being financially dependent on others, even if she is disabled in the future. Her goals are congruent with those of most millionaires in this regard. Question 4. Do you spend a lot of time planning your financial future? For every 100 millionaires who answered no, there are 192 who answered yes. Again, many who answered no are either high-income types with relatively low levels of accumulated wealth, those who inherited all or most of their wealth, or wealthy seniors, retirees. People such as Mrs. Rule accurately labeled themselves as planners. In fact, the responses to this question are highly correlated to the actual hours the respondents allocate to planning their financial futures. On average, millionaires spend significantly more hours per month studying and planning their future investment decisions, as well as managing their current investments, than high income non millionaires. The hours allocated to planning and managing finances are detailed in Chapter 3. Millionaires like Mrs. Rule not only spend more time planning their finances than non millionaires, they also seem to get more out of their planning hours. Remember, Mrs. Rule is not only in the auctioneering business, her job includes appraising the value of what her company auctions. Often, Mrs. Rule invests in those same areas in which she has considerable expertise. In this regard, she is like many millionaires. They astutely allocate their time so that they can plan their business and personal investing at the same time. We often find that highly productive auctioneers are also excellent investors. Take, for example, the auctioneer who specializes in auctioneering commercial real estate. What area of investment does he know a great deal about? Commercial real estate. He is his own investment analyst. What if your auctioneering specialty is antique furniture and American firearms? Should you invest in high-tech securities? Probably not. But you would be wise to use your expertise to help you make your investments. If you're well versed in antiques, why not leverage your knowledge? You don't have to be an auctioneer to benefit from your knowledge. One of our associates was formerly the head of strategic planning at a major corporation. Part of his job was to study a wide variety of trends across a wide variety of business categories. Years ago, he discovered that the demand for investment-grade baseball cards would likely explode someday. This was long before the market reflected this trend. He invested heavily when the market was asleep. In other words, and he sold out all his holdings, including his Mickey Mantle rookie cards, at the top of the market. Another acquaintance, a manager of a department store, always studied trade journals to learn how to make his store more productive. Later, he leveraged his reading habits into investing in growth stocks in retailing area. How much time do non-millionaires allocate to planning and managing? Not enough. As previously stated, much less than millionaires, although millionaires have much more experience in making investment decisions. They allocate significantly more hours than do non-millionaires in an effort to become even better investors. That is one of the main reasons that millionaires remain wealthy. Business owners like Mrs. Rule certainly have more freedom than people who are not self-employed. She can and does leverage her business knowledge with her personal investing habits. She can pick her area of business and the one she wants to study. Often employees don't have this luxury, but even among those who do have significant knowledge about excellent investment opportunities, many do not leverage this knowledge. Consider the following examples. A highly productive sales professional, we will call him Mr. Willis, had Walmart as a client for more than 10 years. All during this time, Walmart was exploding in growth and value. How many shares of Walmart did Mr. Willis, the six-figure earning sales professional, ever purchase? 0. Yes, 0, even though he had considerable first-hand knowledge of his client's success and an annual six-figure income. But he did purchase a foreign luxury car every 2 years during this time. A high-income producing marketing manager, Mr. Peterson, was employed in the high-tech field, but he never invested $1 in Microsoft or any other growth company. Never, in spite of having considerable knowledge about many of the firms in the technology industry. The owner of a printing business enjoyed having one of the leading beverage companies in America as a customer. The customer bought millions of dollars worth of printing from him annually, but how much money has the printer invested in the customer's equity offerings? 0. In all three cases, the person makes a higher income than does Mrs. Rule, yet none is a millionaire. In fact, Mr. Peterson, the marketing manager, has 0 invested in stocks. He never invests in any of his income, but he lives in a $400,000 home that is surrounded by others in the high-tech field who have big hats and bigger mortgages, but no cattle. Too many high-income, low-net-worth types live from paycheck to paycheck, fearing a sudden downturn in our economy. Our friend, the UAW. What motivates Theodore Teddy J. Friend? Why does he work so hard? Why is he driven to earn so much money? Why does he spend so much? Teddy will tell you it's because he's competitive, but so are almost all top producing sales professionals. His competitiveness is not the most important reason for his behavior. When Teddy was growing up, his family was among the poorest in a blue collar community. His family's small home was built from used lumber and similar discarded materials. Until Teddy was a freshman in high school, his father cut Teddy's hair, which did save money, although, according to Teddy, most people could tell that his head was worked on by an amateur. The public high school he attended attracted students from a wide variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. Many were from upscale homes. Rich kids were there in large enough numbers to fill the high school's parking lot with their nice cars. These cars always amazed Mr. Friend. Throughout high school, his family owned one automobile. It was a well-used Ford that his dad had bought when it was 10 years old. During his high school years, Mr. Friend made a promise to himself that someday he would be a lot better off than his parents. Better off, in his mind, meant having a nice home in an upscale neighborhood, fine clothes, and everyone in his family, classy cars, club memberships, and items purchased in the best stores. Mr. Friend realized that better off could be achieved by finding a high-paying position and working very hard. Never did Mr. Friend equate better off with accumulating wealth. Again, being better off meant displaying one's high income via the conspicuous display of high status artifacts. Teddy never gave much thought to the benefits of building an investment portfolio. To him, a high income was the way to overcome a feeling of social inferiority. A high income was the product of hard work. Income in the form of capital gains were foreign words to him. Mr. Friend's father and mother were dysfunctional when it came to putting money away for their rainy day. Their financial plan was very simple. They spent when they had money. They stopped spending when they ran short of money. If they needed something, such as a washing machine or a new roof, they saved for it. But they also bought many items with installment loans. They never owned any stocks or bonds. Never did Teddy's parents set aside income for investment purposes. They did not understand or trust the stock market. The only real financial wealth the couple had was a small pension and the equity in their very modest home. Today, their son has a need to compensate for his primitive blue-collar background and his perceived educational deficiency. Mr. Friend never completed college. Even now, he feels compelled to outperform all the graduates against whom he outperform all the college graduates against whom he competes. He will tell you that he enjoys dressing better, driving better, dwelling better, and in general, living higher than all those college kids who operate within his territory. Mr. Friend is the ultimate consumer. He has 2 boats, 1 jet ski, and 6 automobiles. 2 are leased, and others were purchased via credit. Interestingly, there are only 3 drivers in his household. He is the member of 2 country clubs and wears a watch that costs more than $5,000. He buys his clothes from the best stores. Mr. Friend also owns a vacation condo. Last year, Mr. Friend's income was approximately $221,000. Given his age, 48, what is expected net worth? According to our wealth equation, his net worth should be $1,060,800. What is his real net worth? Less than 1/4 of his expected figure. How is it possible that Mr. Friend has an actual net worth that is less than 1/4 of the expected value? The answer lies in how Mr. Friend thinks. Wealth accumulation is not what motivates him. Interestingly, Mr. Friend firmly believes that if he were really wealthy, he would not be a top income generator. He has often stated that people who come from wealthy backgrounds have little motivation to excel in the workplace. Mr. Friend has found a method to sustain and even enhance his drive to perform at high levels. He has found that fear is a great motivator. So he buys more and more via credit. By increasing the amount he owes, he correspondingly increases the accountant's fear of default. In turn, this increasing level of debt-based fear encourages him to work harder and more aggressively. To him, a big home is a reminder of a big mortgage and the need to perform at high level. Mr. Friend is not a big spender across all categories of products and services. Ask him how much money he allocates for financial advice. In this category, he is very price sensitive. For example, his choice of an accountant was based almost exclusively on the accountant's fees, not on his quality. Mr. Friend has always believed that the quality of service that accountants deliver is about the same, only their fees are different. That's why he picked an accountant who has low fees. In sharp contrast, most wealthy people feel that you get what you pay for in the realm of financial advice. Mr. Friend spends a considerable amount of time working. Still, he constantly worries that he will lose his so-called competitive edge. He is concerned he is concerned that his need to outperform the rich kids, the college graduates, will wane someday. Mr. Friend constantly reminds himself about his humble background and lack of that all-important college degree. He constantly punishes himself psychologically. In his eyes, he is inferior in pedigree to those very confident college graduates against whom he competes. He often wonders how they can be so content given their less than exceptional performance at the workplace. Mr. Friend never really enjoys his life. He owns a lot of upscale things, yet he works so hard for so many hours during a typical day that he has no time to enjoy them. He has no time for his family either. He leaves his house each day before dawn and rarely returns home in time for dinner. Would you like to be Mr. Friend? His lifestyle is appealing to many people, but if these friends really understood Mr. Friend's inner workings, they might evaluate him differently. Mr. Friend is possessed by possessions. He works for things. His motivation and his thoughts are focused on the symbols of economic success. He constantly needs to convince others of this success. Unhappily, he has never convinced himself. In essence, he works, he earns, and he sacrifices to impress others. These factors underlie the thought processes of many under-accumulators of wealth. More often than not, UAWs allow significant others to determine their financial lifestyle. Interestingly, these significant others or reference groups turn out to be more imagined than real. Are you motivated by significant others? Perhaps you should consider a different approach to life. Perhaps you should reorient yourself. Are all high-income people who come from humble beginnings destined to become UAWs? Will they turn out to follow the ways of Mr. Friend? Absolutely not. There is fundamental reason beyond Mr. Friend's perceived social and educational deficiencies that explains why he became a UAW. His parents taught him the ways of the UAW. In spite of their modest income, his parents were not frugal. They spent nearly all their income. They were professionals in expending resources. Any pending increase in income was immediately earmarked for consumption. Even anticipated income tax refunds were allocated for consumption long before the checks were received. Their consumer behavior had an impact on their son. They constantly sent him a message: one earns to spend. When you need to spend more, you need to earn more. Lifelong friends. How did Mr. Friend's parents spend their money? He told us that throughout their marriage, they ate a lot, smoked a lot, drank a lot, and shopped a lot. Their household was always overloaded with food. They stockpiled snack foods, prime meats, cold cuts, ice cream, and other desserts. Even breakfast was a feast. Bacon, sausage, home fries, eggs, English muffins, and Danish pastries were basics in the morning. Steaks and roasts were preferred dinner offerings. The Friends never skipped a meal. Neighbors and relatives were frequent guests at the Friends restaurant, as they referred to their home. Mr. Friend's parents, between them, smoked about 3 packs of cigarettes a day. During a normal week, they consumed 2 cases of beer. On holidays, consumption of food, tobacco, and alcohol greatly increased. Shopping and consuming were the Friends' main hobbies. More often than not, they shopped for fun, not necessity. On most Saturdays, they would shop from the early morning until mid-afternoon. First, they shopped for food. Then they spent countless hours shopping in discount stores. Mr. Friend pointed out that most of the stuff they bought was junk. His mother was an especially aggressive discount store shopper. She had strong proclivity for purchasing large quantities of throw rugs, ashtrays, malted milk balls, caramel corn, towels of every color and style, casual shoes, wooden bowls, and cooking utensils. Many of these items were stockpiled, sometimes for years before they were used. His father was also a recreational shopper. He spent hours each Saturday shopping for tools and hardware. In most cases, these items were rarely, if ever, used. Clearly, Mr. Friend's parents were UAWs. He was well trained, but today he generates a much higher income than his parents ever earned. Why is he still a UAW? This income in itself is a result of parental guidance. His dad often told him to seek a job with high income potential. To do so would enable Mr. Friend to buy the finer things in life. His father's message was clear. To purchase a fine home, luxury automobile, and expensive clothing, one has to earn a large income. Mr. Friend found that several areas of the sales profession had excellent income producing opportunities. He would have to earn big to spend big. No mention was ever made of the value of putting money aside for investing. Income was designed to be spent. Credit was used heavily for major purchases. Mr. Friend and his parents have never appreciated the benefits of accumulating wealth via investing. Mr. Friend told us repeatedly that it's hopeless. He just does not have any money to invest. How is it that someone with an income 6 times the average for American households has no money to invest? Mr. Friend spends more annually for his children's private school and college tuition than the average household earns in a year. He has an inventory of automobiles that is valued in excess of $130,000. He pays more than $12,000 each year for property taxes. His total annual mortgage payment is in excess of $30,000. Several of his suits cost $1,200 each, but his insensitivity to the benefits of investing go beyond his need to consume. His parents had no understanding or appreciation of invested dollars, nor does he, and his parents passed his lack of wisdom on to him. Mr. Friend argues that his parents were people of modest means, people with no money to invest. Let's examine this perception. His parents smoked 3 packs of cigarettes each day. How many packs did they consume during their adult lifetimes? There are 365 days a year, so that consumed approximately 1,095 packs per year. They smoked approximately 46 years, so in 46 years they smoked 50,370 packs of cigarettes. How much did the couple pay for these cigarettes? Approximately $33,190, more than the purchase price of their home. They never considered how much it cost to purchase cigarettes. They viewed such purchases as small expenses, but small expenses become big expenses over time. Small amounts invested periodically also become large investments over time. What if the Friends had invested their cigarette money in the stock market index fund during their lifetimes? How much would it have been? Nearly $100,000. And what if they had used their cigarette money to purchase shares in a tobacco company? What if they had reinvested all dividends and never sold shares in Philip Morris instead of smoking Philip Morris products for 46 years? At the end of 46 years, the couples would have had a tobacco portfolio worth over $2 million. But the couple, like their son, never imagined that small change could be transformed into significant wealth. This change in behavior alone would have placed the Friends in the millionaire category. They would have been members of the PAW group, too, given their modest income. Perhaps they would have lived differently if someone had educated them about the mathematics of wealth and appreciation. No one told them about this phenomenon. So it is not surprising that they failed to educate their son about the benefits of investing. But they did tell him not to smoke. His dad told him, "Don't ever put the first cigarette in your mouth. I'm hooked. There's nothing I can do to quit." His son followed this advice, kicking the UAW habit. How long will Mr. Friend be able to fund his lifestyle? What if he were to stop working today? How long could he live off his current level of wealth? Only for about a year. No wonder he works so hard. Given his current circumstances, Mr. Friend will never be able to retire in comfort. In spite of being nearly 50 years of age, he has yet to figure out this out for himself. But all is not hopeless. Mr. Friend can still become an accumulator of wealth. We find that this is often useful for UAWs to be told the naked truth. Friend, you're worth less than 1/2 of the expected amount for those in your income age group. Such news can spur on UAWs who are competitive. How do they respond when told that their net worth places them in the bottom quartile for all people with similar income and age characteristics? Some are incredulous. Many want to change but are uncertain how to transform themselves. How can someone change when they have more than 20 years experience as a UAW? First, they must really want to change. Second, they will likely need some professional help. Ideally, they need to find a certified public accountant who provides financial planning. A professional of this type would have considerable experience and success with transforming UAWs. That is, they should have a strong track record in helping the Mr. Friends of the world become more Pa-like. In extreme cases, a CPA financial planner actually takes control of the client's purchasing behavior. He first audits the client's consumption habits over the past 2 years. He categorizes and tabulates each element. Then the accountant consults with the client. The client is put into a cold turkey cutback program, meaning that all elements of consumption are reduced by a minimum of 15% for the next year or two. Additional cutbacks follow. In some situations, the accountant financial planner even keeps his client's checkbook, writes all the checks, and pays all the bills. Cold turkey is not easy for most UAWs, but sometimes it's the only way to solve the problem.